All right, Big Man, today is Tuesday. It is September 26th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. As always, on Tuesday, I'm joined by the Chief. Chief, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, we're trudging through.
Yeah.
We're trudging through. That's like these. I'm hoping that these Tuesday episodes aren't becoming angrier because we record them after our Bears podcast, and there's always bad things happening the night before. So you're just always like feeling like a bag of shit. It's Monday.
But
you're pissed off because your team sucks, and there's just a lot of variables.
I think this is the last time that'll happen to me. I don't think the Bears can hurt my mood anymore this year.
Yeah,
it's over, it's done.
I've had seasons feeling that way, but then there's always like one or two games that come and get you, like something.
I feel like the things that'll get the Bears the rest of the way won't happen on Sundays and Mondays. I feel like it'll be midweek
Other stuff like that, yeah.
controversies and stories, and you'll hear I bet you we're gonna have like guys fighting in practice and locker. Like it's this is shaping up to be one of the ugliest seasons.
It's bad.
In a long
it's
time.
bad.
Yeah.
But we won't bore you with that because we know you don't tune into the show for that. And we hopefully won't carry any of that over. So today we're talking labor laws.
Yeah. History of labor. There's a lot going on. Like labor unions. I feel like we had the Starbucks one.
WGA
they just announced
reached an agreement.
Biden is apparently going to picket with the UAW workers, and they have kind of a long, convoluted history. UPS, they just got like a huge wage increase. I think it was like a $30 billion package.
UAW's automobile, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
United Auto Workers is what that stands for. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, labor unions, it's a very complicated issue where it's like you really need to have a purely unbiased PhD level MBA / economist, to really kind of understand it. So I don't think there's never going to be a perfect situation, and being in a global economy and all that, it's a very weird time, but it's something that is definitely necessary. And we can kind of get into that too, because like they were born out of like the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, where people were like just being worked to death. And the reason we decided to do this today is because in 1926, almost 100 years ago, Henry Ford was like the first major industrialist to have a uniform work week. So he did the 40-hour week, 5 days a week. So you had weekends off. Nobody had done that before. So that's why we settled on this, and we'll kind of weave our way through the topic in general.
Yeah. So we'll get into it. Before we do, though, maybe you could start feeling better with this, with Factor meal prep service guys. Mm-hmm. We've talked about these guys before. You should definitely check them out. Obviously, like summer's over. Everyone's trying to get back in the swing a little bit. And, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for your jam-packed days. That's where Factor comes in. They're America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, and they can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. So if you're too busy to cook, but you want to eat well, with Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, cleaning up, and still get the quality, nutrition, and flavor that you need. You can adjust your stride without missing a step here. You could choose from 34-plus weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never-frozen meals, ready to eat in 2 minutes. Okay, if you need an extra boost to support your wellness goals and feel your best as you tackle a busy autumn, try Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. This September, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Head to factormeals.com/dogwalk50 and use code dogwalk50 to get 50% off. One more time, that's code dogwalk50 at factormeals.com/dogwalk50 to get 50% off. Make sure you use the code and the slash. So that's important.
Yeah. Let me tell you where these things come in handy big time. Big time. I was here at the office Saturday, Notre Dame game, get home late, And so whether you're out socializing out at the bar, feel like we've all been there, Uber Eats, like whatever, late night, you're ordering something, some trash. I just reached into the freezer, pulled one of these out, zapped it, cooked it, and like I had a good meal. I was hungry. I hadn't really had dinner. It was like perfect. So like they're always great to just have on deck. You can do, yeah. It's a very convenient thing where you don't feel like, you know, a piece of shit from, you know, ordering late night, something gross, fried, whatever. So yeah, definitely have these on deck in your freezer. You won't regret it.
Yeah, go grab some Factor. All right, Chief, where are we starting with this 40-hour work week?
Yeah, so that was Henry Ford, and if there's a great one of my favorite History Channel shows is a 4-part series, and it's been turned into all sorts of different spin-offs, but it started with the men who built America, and there's all these titans of industry, like these names that are just ingrained into your head, whether it's Vanderbilt or Rockefeller, Carnegie, and then they also do one. I think the 4th episode is about Ford, and there was always like this strife in the Industrial Revolution, where it's like these are the richest people who ever lived, right? Carnegie, Rockefeller doing steel and oil and the trains with Vanderbilt, but they were able to accumulate so much wealth a lot of times because there was nobody protecting the workers. So the workers were like poor, working long hours, terrible conditions, people dying in the factory, no safety standards whatsoever. And as, you know, the Industrial Revolution weighed on, I think that there was this like growing, you know, and there were like riots and all sorts of different things. There were like shootings. Some of these, like Henry Frick, who worked for Carnegie, he had like his own private militia, and there was like a strike outside one of the factories, and they just went down there and started fucking mowing people down. So there was like this outrage in the public, and it was starting to bleed into the polls, where you had people calling for communism, socialism, these different types of wide sweeping things that were taking place, because at the same time as when you had Karl Marx and these ideas that were born out of looking at the world, being like, this is fucked up. We have like this 1%, these Rockefellers making all the money while we're literally basically kind of slaving away, just trying to live. Do you know what the average American, how many hours the average American worked in the 1890s? You know, the Industrial Revolution.
And I guess something crazy, but probably somewhat accurate. 100.
It was 100 hours. It was average.
How about that? I've guessed so wrong so many times on the show.
Yeah.
To nail one feels like a big win.
You got
Please
it.
tweet at me. Congratulations.
Hey, I'll just give it to you right now. Congratulations,
Thank
Ed.
you,
You
Chief.
did it. You
Thank
got
you.
one. But 100 hours a week is fucking insane. So that means you're working, 16-hour days most of the time. And when you have, you know, and you're living in these, you know, poor conditions as cities are booming, they're overcrowded. You're not making any money. The factories are dirty. Like I said, people are dying because there's no real safety standards. Like, oh, you died? Well, there's somebody waiting outside to take your job. Okay. Like, they don't take the body out, send it to the wife. Who fucking cares? And they also had like child labor. Okay. Like that was like the old story. So like my family, I've talked about like my great grandpa was like the plumber for the Kennedy family. Well, the other side of the family, my great grandmother was like having to support her family in Boston, and she worked as like a 12-year-old, you know, probably 80, 100 hours a week in the Gillette razor factory, because that was just like a very common thing where you just fucking around. You're 12 years old, get to work. Okay. Like they didn't go to schools. That's like another episode we should do, is that the American education system. So you know how all the classrooms are set up in rows and bells and things like that. Well, that was designed because they just wanted to make good workers. Did you know that?
No.
So the bell system, you go to the next thing, you get the basics, the reading, the writing, all that. But the way that they structured it, they wanted it to be like uniform, like a factory. So like when you finish your school, you have the skills and you're kind of programmed to be able to work that way because you've been doing it K through whatever until you enter the workforce. So that was really why they designed it. They did it on a factory model. And then Henry Ford came along, was like, hey, and you see that every once in a while now, where it's like, hey, this has gotten out of control. I'm gonna on my own volition, I think I'll get more productivity, things will be better, and we're gonna have this pass because we can't keep having these labor riots, and we want to have a workforce. And he basically, the part of his, there's a quote out there about him with the Model T, is that he wanted to make the Model T affordable, and like to the point that his own factory workers could afford the car that they were making. So that was like a big, it was like a barometer. So he was like, I want to make this affordable to the point that even my own people can buy it, where that wasn't the case for some of these other titans of industry where they're like, fuck these guys, like we don't care. And so Henry Ford is a guy who supposedly actually had a little bit of a heart, and he paid above like what the other people were paying. And he had the assembly line, so he was able to be very efficient and get this done. And then that 40-hour work week, that was written into law 12 years later, the 1938 Fair Labor and Standards Act law, which they introduced the minimum wage for the first time. They standardized overtime pay, so if you're getting $8 an hour for your 8 hours a week, hey, we need you to work 10 hours, you get time and a half. And that, that's been the case forever. And unions needed to become a thing to protect these people, because that is the working class. And you can say that allowed there to be a middle class, which really set up the American economy to just boom after World War II, when everybody was returning to the workforce, and you had all these people who had good paying jobs. And you had, at that time, it was the all-time high of percentage of people who were a part of labor unions. It was 34% of the workforce back then were a part of labor unions. So we're UAW, Teamsters, whatever. Now, you want to do another guess at a number? What percentage of the workforce now do you think is a part of labor unions?
Ooh.
It was 34% at the high.
34% of the high?
Was the high.
And when was that?
Middle of the 20th century.
Okay.
Right in around and right after World War II.
I'll say 66.
You think it's 66% of it? So think of the people that you know in your life. You think two-thirds of them work?
I know so many union people.
Well,
so
that is kind of where you live.
I know.
Yeah.
Like my life is built on union.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, it's like that doesn't sound crazy, but
it is. It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
So the number is 10% of the population works for unions. And that's when you include like government jobs too.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, let me go like some background for that too. Like, even I worked at Jewel, and like they have a union. Like,
yeah.
I always kind of assume too that a lot of these, like, if you work for like a big corporation, which is a lot of the population, there's some type of union backing you, even if it's not as direct as like, Piper's
right.
union, or like 150 operating, or 399
electrician,
stationary
whatever.
engineer.
Yeah.
That's what I always assume, that there's like, I've had like so many of the jobs that I've had were union that weren't even like really union, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was like, all right, like
it's got to be high.
There is a chance that it's
high.
high.
And it's just not. So now the private sector, so not city work or government jobs, the private sector union population is 6%. So it's down quite a bit. The total number has actually held pretty steady from like the last 100 years but like now there's way more people and way more jobs than there were 100 years ago. So as a percentage of the workforce, it's way down, but it's kind of held steady the entire time. And and it's one of those things, like I said, like there's a lot of people who are very anti-union. They say, and I think that there are pros and cons. Like if you are in a union, like if you're in this UAW or you're in whatever, because there are non-union auto workers as well. Do you know the only major auto manufacturer that doesn't use unions?
Let me guess, Toyota.
Nope. We'll get into that in a second.
Okay, let me guess. Tesla.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the only one. So that is literally the only one who is non-union. Toyota, all of like the foreign ones, they really entered and you can kind of tie it to Detroit. Detroit used to be this like awesome American city post World War II, booming. I think it had over 2 million people living in around Detroit at one time. Beautiful, clean, sprawl. It's a big area, and now it never recovered. So in the 70s, what happened was you had Honda, Toyota, some of the German ones entering the United States auto market for the first time in a major way, and they hired all non-union auto workers, and that put the American automakers at a severe disadvantage, because if they're hiring and they still have like Toyota and all these different BMW, all these different companies have plants, like manufacturing plants in the United States, and they also import cars and car parts and things like that. But if you're able to have, let's say, 20% less cost in labor because you're hiring non-union, that typically is the breakdown. I think the number is, if you have a union job, or if you're a non-union employee, you make about 83% of what a union employee would make. That's typically the number. So you're saving 17% if you're Toyota versus Ford. So they're able to then price their cars. Let's pick a number. It could be 10% less. So if it's a Toyota Camry versus a Ford Taurus, competitive cars, well, most people are just gonna be like, let's go with the one that's a little bit cheaper. I can afford it a little bit easier. Normal American citizen. So what that did is, so the UAW, because they were unionized and these other ones weren't, that allowed that really at the end of the day ended up hurting them, because what Ford had to do was they had to cut jobs. The big American ones had to cut jobs and cut production because they just couldn't afford it, and they couldn't keep up with the foreign companies who had just much lower labor costs. And eventually, somehow the unions got control of, and they unionized all of like I said, all the automakers, with the exception of Tesla is the only one that doesn't have it right now. Mm-hmm. But I kind of got off a tangent there. But like there are pros and cons to being a union member. I said that you're going to have higher pay. You are going to have, and not to say that Tesla doesn't have safe working conditions, but like you have like safety protections. Like they have to pay. It's like a standardized thing. You have to pay to make sure all the equipment's safe, the floors are safe. Like everything's up to par. You have job security. Like you can't just, like, if you're going to fire a union employee, you like have to go through, there has to be like severe cause, where if you're non-union, they could just be like, hey, you're out.
Yeah.
So.
And what's good is the union, if you do get fired, they'll help you get somewhere else.
Yep. So there's definitely protections. There's also like community in there. Like you see those people that wear those, the merch. Like,
oh, totally.
Yeah, people care about their unions. They want to be a part of it. Then the downsides would be like, if let's say that you're supporting a family and you're kind of almost paycheck to paycheck, and your union decides to go on strike, well, you're not getting paid. Yeah. And if you look at what's going on with like the writers out in LA, they're on strike 9, 10, 12 weeks. That's a long time for most people to go without any work and any money. So it's like, what are you going to do? You are, as a member of the union, you are forbidden to work. So you're kind of fucked. So you don't really have any, and even if you're like, no, I was content with what we were making, I don't agree with the strike, you're part of the union, tough. That's the way it goes. Your dues are anywhere between 1 and 4. I think it's 1 and 4% typically. So, if you're making $50,000 a year, let's say, that's $500, not that big of a deal. Could be $2,000 depending on the union. And then we've seen throughout the years, like the corruption that has, like the Jimmy Hoffa stories where they get in with the mafia. Like there has been corruption. And then, they say that if you're like a real, it almost doesn't matter how competent you are. Like the most important thing typically is just how long you've been there. So if you're like a 26-year-old guy and you're busting your ass and you're like, hey, I am the best guy here, the union kind of prevents you from like rapidly rising in the workforce. So it's just one of those, it's like a trade-off. It's just one of those things. But like, it's like I said, it's a very, very complicated issue. It's crazy how, like, if you ask the general public if you're for or against labor unions, even though like we said 6% of the population are actually in one, 71% of Americans, regardless of where you work, are in favor of unions. So they have like a very high, think of something, can't really think of anything that has
that much support.
Yeah. That's a big number.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
See, that's why like that goes into my fucking number that I guessed too.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of vocal support for it too.
Right.
You know what, going back, you know what movie does a pretty damn good job about like the conditions and whatnot of, back in the day?
No, it's that?
Cinderella Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if people have seen that.
That's like your favorite movie.
It's definitely one of my favorite sports movies and one of my favorite movies all time, just in general. They do a great job. Like he's hurt. He can't go on disability.
Yep.
There's nothing he can do. His hand's fucked up. He's still got to go out there and work his balls off because there's no protection.
Yeah. And that was depression time and work his balls off for almost nothing.
Yeah.
Down at the docks and it is one of those things where it's like, I am very like, I don't really know. The older I get and the more I pay attention to things and try to understand things, the more I realize I don't know fucking shit about anything. And it's so hard to figure out like where the truth is. And this kind of brings me back to, because I would say for a while, because I was in manufacturing in my previous life.
Yeah.
And two different companies in manufacturing. And one of them was, we had a unionized workforce, and the other one was not. And I would say, well, I had issues in both scenarios. You had the unionized company. It was like a stronger company, but it was like it was like a very, it's a weird work environment when you have like an adversarial relationship with the workforce. Because it's like, you can't ask them to do anything more. You get ratted onto the union. Then there's like, hey, you can't do that. It's a problem. Like, so it's like
you're saying the protections may have made things a little more complicated.
Very, very much more complicated and more expensive. But then when the other company, we had non-unionized, and we had a very hard time getting good workers. Because, I can't even this is like kind of a weird thing. I don't even know if I should say this, but we had a lot of guys with ankle bracelets. We had a lot of guys who didn't have licenses to get themselves to work, couldn't get there on time because things would get suspended. Like if we had a unionized shop, we would have had much lower. We would have had tighter margins, and they were tight as it was with that company. I've got a company eventually went under. But then you also, I think we probably would have had better workers. So they're like, we're not scraping the bottom of the barrel for employment. Like we had like, it was bad, some bad dudes up there and in that plant. And it was like, so I think about that sometimes. Like, would it have been better to go with some kind of union workers as opposed to what we did, which ended up costing us more headaches and more downtime and more, the things weren't running. Guys are kind of fuck ups. Like we could have had a better, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it makes me, I wonder about that all the time. And then I also wonder about it in terms of like, what's better for the country. So unions are weaker now than they used to be. Unions used to like fucking, the tail that wags the dog kind of thing.
Jimmy
Hoffa. Shut everything down. You had corporations kind of buy the balls, get the better pay, and then we entered this era of this global economy where it's like, like the unions used to be able to throw their weight around And then we entered a plane like, you know what, fuck you. We're going to go to Mexico. We're going to go to China. We're going to ship all these jobs elsewhere, and we'll save a little, it'll cost us more up front because we have to build these new facilities and train new workers, but then we'll pay them pennies on the dollar and fuck you guys. We'll make, money hand over fist forever. And then you see these American manufacturing, the whole Midwest, the whole Great Lakes, the Rust Belt kind of fucking died. Cleveland died. Toledo died. Toledo was like the glass capital of the world for a while. Now it's not that anymore. Detroit, obviously, we talked about. And it was because, the labor unions probably, maybe they didn't see it coming necessarily, like this intense globalization will just ship everything to China and bring it back and lower prices. But it's like, was that ultimately good for the country to have all these lower priced goods, which is what we had always been told? Or should we have done it like we were before, where things were a little bit more expensive? But like, you go back to that episode we did in What the Fuck Happened in 1971, where that's when things really, in the 70s, when Nixon opened up China and companies started in mass going between the 70s up to the 90s, that's when everything started moving overseas. And that's when you start really seeing the disparity between the CEO of a company and the common worker, and Wall Street and the Main Street. Like, that's when that gap really started to grow. So, and that was a big part of the problem too, is when like Japan, they don't buy Ford cars over there because the things are fucking taxed and tariffed forever. Yeah. We have come over here, make the cars. Like, we don't really, we like that. They always talk about NAFTA. NAFTA was, the unions were very anti the North American Free Trade Agreement in the 90s. Clinton signed that. Well, it was because they were like, hey, they're going to ship all these jobs to Mexico. And now now that like China, their economy has grown so much that the labor is not as cheap, and we have this adversarial relationship, there's a lot of people that are saying like, hey, Mexico has a chance to be the next China because the wages won't be as low, but they're right there. They're right next door. And so shipping will be easier. All that kind of stuff will be easier. And we'll just put the stuff across the border when, we'll find a Toledo in Mexico to make our glass. We used to be making it in China. Well, we can't do it in China anymore. We better make it somewhere closer. Maybe it's Mexico. But if we had that, maybe if we didn't have that free trade agreement, we would have been able to keep more of those jobs here. And that's why, like, if you remember in the run up to the 2016 election, Trump, really, there was that TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was supposed to have this, trade agreement, free trade agreement with all these countries in Asia. And Trump was like, this will fuck everybody. And then, because all the traditional mainstream politician people were pushing for it. And then Trump said that, and then everybody switched. Everyone didn't get signed, and he basically killed it just by talking about it. And so it's like, you just don't know what the answer is, because it feels like the economy and the country were stronger when the unions were stronger. But I don't have any real data other than cost of living. I'm sure there's a million other factors, but it does feel like that was a thing, that when the unions were strong and the labor was strong and you could be a high school graduate and get a job where you're working 40 hours a week and comfortably raise your family and send kids to college, that seems like that's a better situation.
Yeah, I feel like the price of education has a chance to make unions
make them stronger,
powerhouse again.
But they have to be able to have jobs there waiting for them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you have to be able to have those manufacturing facilities come back here.
Yeah.
In order to, because I agree, the cost of it, that's where I get so I'd love to have you always hear about the debt forgiveness, but you don't hear about we need to normalize the prices. If you just forgive the debt and that goes into the country's debt burden, somebody's still going to be holding that ticket. Somebody's going to have to pay that. Well, you didn't you didn't treat the disease. You treated a symptom. You didn't treat the disease, which is ultimately the price. But yeah, I think there is some truth to that, where it's like, hey, fuck college. There's no ROI on that. What, am I just going to be in debt forever? There's no ROI. I'm going to go get a job. And if you had it, so maybe there is something to that.
Strength in numbers or something, and that could kind of bring it back. Who knows?
Totally. So provided that there are the jobs.
Yeah.
which there used to be. And that was like the thing where used to be not, and this is typically not a union job, but that 1971 thing, used to be able to work at a gas station and afford to buy a house. You have to be making well over six figures now. Like I'm talking in 2023, even a lot has changed in the last year to buy the home price, medium home price, like over 400,000. It's fucking insane.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of issues going on, but I don't even know where to unwind it. But it feels like we need a stronger working class and a stronger middle class to combat some of these issues, and it's just not there right now. And now it's like you said the writer strike just ended,
mm-hmm.
right? So do you know what that what finally tied that back together?
I don't.
So they had a large agreement that couldn't settle on like the whole AI issue, like who gets credit for like AI writing script, So that was like the last sticking point. They finally did that, and just as that ended, the UAW strike continues. So this is the first time in 88 years that it's not called Chrysler anymore. It's something with a P, but it's Ford, Chrysler, GM. UAW is going after those three all at the same time for the first time in 88 years. They're asking for the automakers offered between all three of them were different, but they were between 17.5% and 20% pay increases across the board that will be rolled out over a 4-year period. They're asking for 36 over 4 years. They also are asking for 4-day work weeks. So 5 days has been the standard for just about 100 years, 40 hours. They're asking for a 32-hour, 4-day-a-week work model. Bernie Sanders had kind of floated that, like, hey, maybe we should start looking at 32-hour work weeks. And then that's been like the asking thing. And for the first time, I think ever, a sitting president is going to picket with the strikers. So the auto workers, and they're started in Missouri, and they're striking. There's 13,000 people on strike, and the estimation is that this auto worker strike is going to cost the economy between $5 and $6 billion every single day, and it's going to make the cost of cars skyrocket too.
And they already have been skyrocketing.
And they've already been skyrocketing.
Yeah, if you can go listen to that episode I did months ago with the car dealership guy, great Twitter account. I mean, the market was already nuts. The whole microchip fiasco screwed everything. COVID obviously fucked with the supply chain even more. That could get very ugly.
Very ugly. And they're the big three automakers here are like, you're putting us at another like very competitive disadvantage the way that we were 30 years ago, before all the foreign automakers unionized. And it's like they're like, we're under tremendous pressure as it is. Take the fucking 20% is what they're saying, because it's like we're having to transition into this kind of government dictated, Wall Street dictated EV craze, the electric vehicle craze, where they're not making any money, supposedly, is what they're saying on those cars, because like the upfront infrastructure,
they've been struggling too.
Yeah,
they've been, because
so they need the gas powered ones to pay the bills, and then they're pushing the EV ones because they're getting pushed by like the ESG and the government to make the EVs, and it's just like their margins are tight. But if I don't blame the workers though either, because it's like, look, fucking eggs cost $10. Like it is hard to live now. So if you're a normal working guy, let's say you're making $80,000 a year, you've been working in your job in the plant for a while, $80,000 doesn't go as far as it used to.
Yeah,
not even close.
And I did see Obama tweeted too. Did you see that?
No, what he said?
Like, he was like, hey, we were there for you in 2008. Like, you got to be there for the people now.
Who was? Oh, when he bailed out the auto industry?
Exactly. So, and I don't know, like, I'm just saying he tweeted. I don't know what the,
I
don't know enough about it to like give, like,
say that about the banks, Obama.
True.
It gave the trillions, and then it's like they're allowed to have credit cards that charge you 20% interest. Like, I don't see him saying that about the banks. Say that about the banks.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I mean, where it's like,
you're not wrong.
Where it's like, even in the last election cycle, because the unions are big political donors too, and they donated 90%. I think in 2022 they spent $93 million. Was the figure I saw, and 90% of that went to the Democratic Party. But I don't think that, if you look at the raw numbers about, their pay versus their real wages versus inflation and some of these trade policies that get passed, I feel like nobody is really on the side of the middle class. Like that's how it feels in the working class. Like nobody's really doing anything for them. Like they're not better off for donating to the left is what it seems like to me. So it feels like, and that's really, and you've seen I don't know if you saw this, John Cusack went on a rant, our boy, White Sox Dave's number one enemy, saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class. And it's like, man, that guy is a fucking lunatic. But I think he's right about that one. Like that used to be, the Democratic Party used to be for labor and the working man. And it hasn't been for like 20 years. Like it feels like they're both just like kind of Wall Street puppets. And now I think it's another thing that I saw, that it was like the 20 richest counties in America, all went Democrat last time. So it's like and it's all kind of like Wall Street, Greenwich, Connecticut, places like that, where it's like everybody is self-interested to a degree.
Yeah.
And so you have the unions or it's just like, it just feels like there's just like that kind of, it's like a Wall Street class, like one kind of ruling class, and everything else is fucked. So I don't know what any of the answers are, but when you look at it more and more, it's just like this is like nothing here adds up the right way. And it's like, I don't know how it ends, but it's also, I got the Neil Howe, the Fourth Turning, the new one of that, and I've been listening to that. I'm like, oh my God, like everything is fucked. Everything is fucked. So you just kind of see it in more places, and I feel like we're seeing it. Starbucks had the big unionization. That was a win for them. UPS, the biggest union in America by membership is the NEA. It's a teachers union. National Educators Association. It's over 3 million people. So you have like all of these like, and they're still pretty powerful, but it doesn't feel like they're able to swing policy towards their members the way that they once did. So it's like, I don't know. It's like you need everybody to just kind of sit down and get together. Like, what's the best thing for the most amount of people? Like that's what democracy is supposed to be about. And it just feels like we can't get there because no one can figure out what the truth is.
Yeah, because like you said, there's so many self-interests.
Yeah, and short-term interests. Like you want to be able to be like, hey, and that's, people always would say that about China, where it's like, our politicians are trying to. It's the nature of our government. It's 2 and 4 year. We're always up for re-election, right? 2, 4, 6. If you're senator 6, president 4, representative 2. So you're always just kind of trying to curry favor, get funding, get votes for the next cycle. Where China can be like, this is our policy, and this is a 40-year play, 50-year play, 100-year play, and they're able to, like, they can have a legitimate long-term strategy in a way that we can't. It kind of fundamentally puts us at a disadvantage. But we gotta get, I feel like we gotta get like the money out of politics. There's too much like interweaving between public and private sector too. And we gotta get a stronger middle class. And I think that might start with having stronger, better unions and lower cost of education.
Yeah.
So we gotta get gotta get smart people back in charge too.
People who fucking are straight down the middle and see how it is too. Not
people just tell the truth.
Yeah, people that are just not into the bullshit.
Yeah.
All right then.
It's hard to find that.
Yeah. Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.